Did you know that could Saturn hold one of the biggest secrets in NASA history? What if I told you that, for decades, confidential information about this giant planet was silently archived away from the public eye? It may sound like a science fiction script, but what you are about to discover goes far beyond your imagination. Saturn is not just a gaseous colossus with majestic rings. According to leaked documents and reports from former employees of the American Space Agency, it is the possible stage for one of the biggest cover-up operations of the modern era. Secret missions, interrupted transmissions, purposeful destruction of probes. All of this involving the sixth planet of the solar system. Why? What did NASA find on Saturn that never made the news? Stay with me until the end, because this could be one of the most revealing videos you will watch today. Maybe you felt that not everything is as it seems when it comes to space exploration, and you're not alone. The truth about NASA's Saturn missions involves words few people dare utter: secret programs, unidentified technology, and possible signs of intelligent life on moons like Titan and Enceladus, while the media focuses on Mars and the race of billionaires toward space. Saturn remains shrouded in silence, and this silence says much more than any official statement. Are we facing a space conspiracy carefully constructed over the last few decades? Or just information so disturbing that it cannot be revealed? To humanity, what you discover now may surprise you, and maybe even leave you with more questions than answers. If all this is true, and some evidence suggests that it is, why was Cassini, NASA's most advanced mission to this planet, purposefully destroyed? What did she see there that no one should see? Get ready, because from now on, we begin an investigative journey through forgotten files, hushed testimonies and images that perhaps were never meant to reach us. Get ready, because from now on, we begin an investigative journey through forgotten files, hushed testimonies and images that may never have been meant to reach us. And while you delve into this mystery with me, I want to invite you to be part of this search for answers. If this topic makes sense to you, if any part of this story aroused a feeling of doubt, indignation, or even hope, leave here in the comments what touched you most. Your vision matters, and it is often in the comments that the most unexpected connections between the pieces of this puzzle emerge. Also, take the opportunity to like this video. It may seem like a simple click, but that's exactly what makes YouTube understand that this content needs to reach more people who, like you, feel that there's something wrong being hidden up there and down here too. And if you want to continue following these investigations, these theories, and possible truths that no one dares to tell, subscribe to the channel now, because it is your presence here that keeps this flame burning and allows us to go deeper and deeper. We're just getting started, and what comes next may lead you to see Saturn and NASA itself from a new perspective. While billions of dollars are poured into projects to colonize Mars, create red soil habitats, and simulate atmospheres in Earth's deserts, Saturn, with its dozens of moons, subterranean oceans, and untapped geological potential, remains shrouded in disconcerting silence. It's not just a question of scientific priority or tight budgets. It's something deeper. There is a difference between not knowing and not wanting to talk. And in the case of Saturn, it seems that what it is not said screams much louder than any published data. The Cassini mission, one of the most ambitious in the history of space exploration, spent more than a decade collecting data, taking thousands of photos, and transmitting invaluable information about the Saturn system. However, something curious happens when observing the end of this mission. Instead of keeping the probe active until the last second safely, NASA decided to program its destruction. Yes, Cassini was deliberately dropped into Saturn's atmosphere to be disintegrated. Officially, the justification was to avoid possible biological contamination of Enceladus or Titan, moons that may harbor conditions favorable to life. But was that the only reason? When we look behind the scenes of this decision, we see a chain of highly controlled, strategically silent choices. Between 2015 and 2017, rumors emerged that Cassini had detected gravitational anomalies around Titan and unusual structures beneath the surface of Enceladus, captured by radar and thermal mapping instruments. This data, curiously, has never been widely discussed or even disclosed in public collections. Some files have disappeared. Others were classified as not relevant by the final reports. What defines relevance when we are faced with possible revelations that could change our understanding of existence? From that point on, we begin to notice a pattern of decisions that not only reflect scientific precautions, but rather an information control mentality. NASA has always been at the center of technological transformations and incredible advances. No one questions that. But, at the same time, it has also been the keeper of secrets that, according to some, humanity is not yet ready to absorb. And Saturn may be precisely the stage for these hidden truths. Enceladus, for example, houses an underground ocean beneath its icy crust, with geysers that release water vapor hundreds of kilometers into space. NASA itself has already declared that this moon has all the ingredients to support life. And yet, why are there no missions planned to return there? Why was Enceladus, which should be at the top of the list of scientific priorities, left aside? And what about Titan, a moon with rivers and lakes of methane, a thick atmosphere, and an active climate cycle like Earth's? The absence of missions added to the scarcity of public data leads us to question whether there is in fact an institutional decision to don't look at Saturn. Or worse, not allow us to look. When the dominant narrative focuses on Mars, perseverances, drones, and Elon Musk's plans to build colonies in the Martian desert, what is really being covered up on the other side of the solar system? Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, cause when we cross this information with reports of probes that have mysteriously disappeared, and with reports of amateur astronomers who have captured unusual lights orbiting Saturn, the narrative begins to change. It goes from negligence to concealment, from scientific priority to narrative control. And at this point in the journey, it becomes increasingly difficult to believe that this is all just a coincidence. Comment there. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when we start to connect the dots left by the Cassini mission, what emerges is not just a vacuum of information, but a true puzzle of hidden intentions. During its years orbiting Saturn, Cassini sent back thousands of images, measurements, and magnetic records. But some of these transmissions, specifically those involving flybys of Enceladus and Titan, presented curious flaws: abruptly cut audio, incomplete records, and most intriguingly, files that were classified as classified for internal analysis. Among these files are reported data that suggest the presence of structures with unusual geometric patterns just beneath Enceladus's icy crust. Straight lines in places where only the chaos of nature should exist. Some engineers involved in processing these images anonymously described formations that resemble artificial cracks and symmetries that defy the logic of an environment formed purely by geological activity. The leaked radar images, which circulated on forums before mysteriously disappearing, show shapes that resemble linear corridors. It's as if something were buried or built beneath the ice. Of course, officially, none of this has been confirmed. But the absence of an explanation cannot be ignored either. When science is silent in the face of something unexpected, the space for doubt expands, and in this vacuum, signs of a hidden fall comes. Signs of a hidden truth emerge. Titan, in turn, is another chapter in its own right. In one of Cassini's last passes through its thick orange atmosphere, sensors recorded a change in the electromagnetic field that, according to independent experts, cannot be explained by known natural phenomena. Interestingly, the images of this maneuver were never published in full. What reached the public was a superficial compilation already edited, without the raw data, as if something had been carefully filtered behind the scenes of scientific communication. It is impossible to ignore that all of this strategic move by NASA to end the mission with the total destruction of the probe came precisely after these supposed discoveries. A definitive decision, an archive burning on a cosmic scale. Nothing is left of Cassini. Nothing that can be investigated by independent agencies or scientists outside the official circuit. And here we enter a delicate zone. When control over information is absolute, interpretations become unlimited. And the conspiracy in this scenario stops being just a hypothesis and becomes an analysis tool. After all, if there are no clear explanations, anything is possible. There are those who say that this strategy of eliminating evidence is not new, that it is part of a mentality of containment, where access to knowledge is controlled not by science, but by political decisions and greater interests. The impact of this goes beyond space. It's a question of how we deal with the truth, who has the right to know it, and how that shapes our decisions as a society. Because if we are being deprived of knowing what is on Enceladus or Titan, what else is being filtered out? What other revelations were buried, digitally or literally? The most disconcerting thing is to realize that, despite advanced technology, its promises of transparency, and the absurd amount of resources invested, we still live in a scenario where secrets prevail. And these secrets are not mere theories. They are missing pieces in a narrative that, so fragmented, begins to become suspicious in itself. The question is no longer whether there is something being hidden. The question is, why? Why so much effort to erase tracks? Why risk the credibility of one of the largest space agencies in the world with attitudes that seem more like part of a fictional script than scientific protocol? And, most importantly, who benefits from this silence? Right there. That makes sense to me. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because as this puzzle forms before our eyes, theories begin to emerge that, at first glance, seem absurd, but that take shape when confronted with the absence of plausible explanations. One of the most talked about hypotheses behind the scenes in ufology and among former NASA collaborators is that Saturn, or more specifically, its moons such as Enceladus and Titan, may harbor signs of an ancient non-human civilization, perhaps extinct, perhaps just silent. This idea, although challenging, is based not only on assumptions, but on leaks, testimonies, and fragmented data that have escaped the control of official institutions. Confidential reports cited by former analysts suggest that Cassini recorded abnormal thermal patterns beneath the ice of Enceladus, in areas where there is no known geological activity. Patterns that, according to them, remind heat zones associated with technical, non-natural structures. This, coupled with reports of electromagnetic interference during specific transmissions, gave rise to a theory circulating among independent researchers that there is a subglacial base hidden on that moon. Even more surprising is the allegation, made by a former Cassini mission collaborator, under the condition of anonymity, that internal images never released to the public showed not only structural irregularities, but what appeared to be a symmetrical artifact, similar to a cylindrical construction with exact mathematical proportions. When this material was taken to superiors, the order was clear: archive and reclassify. He claims that, a few days later, he lost access to the system where this data was stored. The official explanation: review of security protocols. This is where the mindset behind these decisions starts to become as relevant as the information that is being suppressed. What makes an agency hide discoveries that could revolutionize our understanding of the universe? The most accepted answer by those investigating these behind the scenes is control over the impact. Revealing the existence of non-human intelligence, even if past, would shake deep pillars of society: religion, science, politics, economics. And, more than that, it would call into question who should lead this narrative. Who decides what is revelation and what is taboo? Many independent researchers point out that if there are indeed traces of advanced technology on these moons, we are talking about something that could surpass our current ability to understand. Imagine an energetic structure capable of operating in an icy environment like Enceladus, or technological artifacts camouflaged in methane lakes on Titan. This would imply a level of engineering that does not match today's human limitations, but that has perhaps been there for thousands or millions of years. The theory of the presence of an ancient alien civilization in these places is not only based on the desire to believe in the unknown, but on small loopholes that escape an excessively controlled official narrative. And when we add this information to the logic of concealment, the scenario becomes even more disturbing. Imagine for a moment that some government or elite institution had access to fragments of this technology, an ancient artificial intelligence, an unknown propulsion system, or even a source of clean and infinite energy. Why share this knowledge with humanity when it can be used to maintain an unattainable advantage? If we look closely at human history, the pattern is recurring. Every discovery with transformative potential has always been accompanied by disputes, appropriations, and attempts at monopoly. Saturn then transforms from a mere gas giant to a silent symbol of a greater truth that we may not yet be ready to face. It's a truth that is not only hidden in deleted data or blurred images, but in decisions which were taken away from the public eye. Because when a billion-dollar mission like Cassini is terminated with such precision and urgency, without leaving a physical trace, what goes out with it is not just the probe. It's the trail of what she found, or what she shouldn't have found. Right? That makes sense to me. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because when the theory gains visual support, even in fragments, the narrative stops being just a hypothesis and starts flirting with evidence. And it is at this point that the images, those that few have actually seen carefully, gain a central role. There are records from NASA itself, released in raw packages, in which it is possible to observe structures on the surface of Enceladus that simply do not fit into known natural patterns. Structures that are not formed by random geological processes. Straight lines, perfect angles. Symmetrical shading that suggests relief with design. One particular sequence, dated 2011, shows what appears to be a cross-section through the ice with uniform edges and a darkened center. Independent experts in spatial image analysis, when applying thermal filters and scale overlay, indicated that it was around 300 meters long and compatible with a 20-story building. Officially, this was classified as unusual surface formation, but there was no in-depth study published in academic channels. Why? The lack of investigation in itself already raises legitimate suspicion. Another image, which briefly went viral on forums before being removed from multiple sources, shows a sequence of luminous dots aligned horizontally on Titan's surface. The spacing pattern between the points is constant, and there is a slight distortion in the atmosphere just above them. When radio interference experts analyzed this material, they found a curious detail. The files were corrupted exactly at the point where the signals from these points would have been recorded. The audio, which should have been continuous, was interrupted with an abrupt noise, followed by absolute silence. This interruption is relevant because it is not a common technical error. Several former telemetry operators who participated in previous Cassini missions confirm that failures like this do occur, but they are generally preceded by automatic alerts in the systems. In this specific case, there was no warning, just the cut. And what came next was an update to the probe's transmission system that made it impossible to recover previous data. Technical coincidence or strategic decision? There is also testimony from a third-party analyst who worked on the process of reviewing the images captured in the last months of the mission. In an interview with an investigative channel, he reported that part of the material that came into his hands went through a visual cleaning process in which elements were blurred before they were even made available. He claims that he saw with his own eyes high-definition images of circular marks in the ice, too large to be craters and with raised inner edges, which would suggest some form of hidden structure. And if that still seems too far away, there are archived records of radio frequencies that were picked up as the probe passed the far side of Saturn. Intermittent frequencies with an irregular binary pattern, which were initially dismissed as cosmic noise. However, months later, an independent team of radio amateurs managed to replicate part of the signal and realized that it did not behave like any other noise previously captured. It did not follow the pattern of solar flares or magnetic reflections. It was something different, something that seemed charged with intention. All these pieces, when placed side by side, do not form definitive proof, and it is important to say that responsibly. But they form a map, a roadmap of evidence that can no longer be ignored. And this script leads us to question what was really found there. What caused so much visual and auditory content to be filtered, distorted, or suppressed? Why so much effort to silence data instead of studying it openly? It is at this point in the journey that the question changes. It is no longer a question of knowing if there is something hidden, but of understanding what they don't want us to see. And more than that, why can't we see? What is it about this material that, if released, could provoke a profound transformation in the way we see the universe and ourselves? Comment there. The truth is in the details. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because, faced with so much evidence, what remains is to compare the official explanations with what is in front of our eyes, or, often, purposefully hidden. According to NASA itself, all visible formations on Enceladus, Titan, and other moons of Saturn can be explained by natural phenomena. Ice moving under pressure, cryovolcanism, erosion caused by solar winds, or the constant impact of micrometeorites. Everything seems very well justified, clean, scientifically plausible. But there is a stark difference between plausibility and truth. And it is exactly in this interval that the most legitimate doubts arise. The official version, for example, treats the electromagnetic signals captured by Cassini as anomalous responses from the environment. At no point is it admitted that there was intentional interference. Even when the data shows abrupt interruptions with repetitive patterns, something that is not common in the random behavior of nature. If it were a rare but natural phenomenon, the scientific approach should be to investigate in depth, not suppress or disqualify. Silence, in this case, speaks louder than any official note. Furthermore, high-definition images that have been released publicly are mostly processed versions. The raw material rarely surfaces. And when it comes, it almost always arrives with technical failures, missing sections, or deleted metadata. When confronted about this, the standard response is always the same: data optimization for public analytics. But if the intention was truly transparency, why not allow independent researchers full access to the files? Why make it so difficult to trace the original path of these records? These small inconsistencies, which could go unnoticed by an inattentive eye, become glaring when seen clearly. There is a kind of institutional mentality that Pews to Pews operates in a very similar way in all cases where there is something too sensitive to be shared. First, deny it, then minimize it. Finally, if necessary, silence. The justification is always the same: avoid panic, protect the national interest, or maintain the focus on relevant data. But who defines what is relevant? Who decides which part of the truth deserves to be told and which should be erased? Within academia itself, this tension between official science and investigative thinking grows every year. Researchers who dare to raise alternative hypotheses based on unrecognized evidence are often discredited or marginalized. Debate is stifled and skepticism is confused with denialism. But there is a fundamental difference between denying science and questioning the single version of reality that we are given. The true scientific spirit is that of doubt, of the constant search for explanations that make sense. And when the answers offered seem shaped more to soothe than to inform, something is off. And here we come to a delicate but necessary point. The hidden truth is not always hidden out of evil. Sometimes it is protected out of fear. The fear of the impact that a discovery could cause. The fear of the transformation that this revelation could provoke in collective thinking. Imagine, for example, if an unknown technology was proven to exist beneath the ice of Enceladus. This would call into question all our certainties about evolution, time, intelligence, and even spirituality. Would humanity be ready to face this? Perhaps. Therefore, the cut in live broadcasts during critical moments of the Cassini mission was not just a technical failure. Maybe it was a choice, a way to preserve something that cannot be revealed now, or perhaps ever. But history shows that sooner or later, the truth always finds a way to emerge. And it usually starts like this, with simple questions disconnected. Images, ignored signs, till everything starts to fall into place. Come in there. This doubt is legitimate. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, okay? Because this is precisely where everything takes an unexpected turn. Among all the hidden data, inexplicable silences, and blurred images, there is a decision that reveals something much greater than any isolated speculation: the deliberate destruction of the Cassini probe. And it wasn't an accident. It was not a technical failure. It was an order. A plan executed with surgical precision, transmitted directly by mission controllers. Officially, the justification is simple and even understandable: to avoid biological contamination of Enceladus or Titan if the probe collided with one of these moons. After all, as they have the potential to harbor forms of microbial life, it would be unethical and dangerous to take any terrestrial microorganism there. It seems like a sensible decision from those who care about the future of science. But when you put this explanation under the microscope of logic, its cracks begin to appear. Why not program Cassini for a long-term stable orbit, far from any celestial body? Why not keep the probe active until its transmissions ceased naturally? Why the rush to destroy one of the most advanced equipment ever sent into space, just after its last and closest flybys of Enceladus? Why not risk continuing to receive valuable data, even at a lower volume? And this is where the most intriguing theories emerge. One of the most debated among independent physicists and astronomers suggests that Cassini may have captured something that should not have been seen. Not a technical accident, but a discovery, perhaps an image, a magnetic reading, an energy anomaly that required the mission to be terminated immediately. Something that could not be transmitted to Earth, or that, if it were, it would need to be intercepted before becoming public. A former telecommunications engineer on the mission, who worked behind the scenes until the final days of Cassini's operation, told a closed forum that the probe's transmission system was updated shortly before its final descent to include a new safety protocol. This protocol, according to him, made it impossible to recover data externally, even if the probe was intact. In other words, the latest data could never fall into the wrong hands. And what lies behind the scenes of this decision may never be officially revealed. Cassini's destruction wasn't just the end of a mission. It was the closing of a window, the scheduled death of a silent witness who spent years observing something we may never fully understand. And it's curious to see how all of this was communicated to the public in an almost poetic way, with beautiful videos of the probe's last dance, inspiring phrases about the end of a cycle, as if we were watching the end of a film. But a film only ends when the story ends. And in this case, the story is not over. It was silent. People who closely followed Cassini's trajectory say that the last few days have been the most tense. Entire teams were directly ordered to restrict access to real-time data. The internal atmosphere, according to reports, was not one of celebration, it was one of vigilance. Everything seemed to be monitored with unusual rigidity, as if the mission had crossed a limit it shouldn't have, and maybe it even surpassed it. Maybe Cassini got too close, photographed something that was not part of the plan. It recorded a heat signature, a shadow that shouldn't be there, or even a frequency that wasn't produced by any natural body. An intelligence, an artificial structure. Nobody knows for sure. But what we know is that the answer to this question was swallowed by Saturn's atmosphere, in a final dive that, on the surface, seemed scientific. But inside, it carried the distinct smell of secret. Right there. Cassini saw something he couldn't tell. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because there comes a point in this journey when the data, the images, and even the evidence begin to give way to something even more disturbing. The questions that have no answer, or that, perhaps, they do, but no one dares reveal it. And it is in this silence that the most powerful reflections emerge. What if there is, in fact, something on Saturn that surpasses our current understanding? Something that challenges not just science, but the very emotional and spiritual fabric of humanity. Are we ready to know, or do we somehow still need to be protected from the truth? This possibility presents us with a dilemma that goes far beyond astronomy. It's a matter of collective conscience. Because thinking about intelligent life beyond Earth is no longer taboo. It's almost inevitable. The real question now is, what happens to human beings when they are faced with the unquestionable? With the final proof that you were never alone. Our civilization, with all its advances, still behaves like a child faced with the unknown. Curious, yes, but also reactive. Emotionally unprepared to assimilate something that could alter the axis of our reality. What if these moons aren't just blocks of ice orbiting a distant planet? What if they are cosmic vaults of knowledge? Mirrors of another civilization's past, or of our own origins in some timeline we've forgotten. It may seem exaggerated at first glance, but how many truths that are obvious today have been discredited in the past? The Earth was once considered the center of the universe. It was once believed that oceans ended in abysses. And perhaps today, the most comfortable lie is that we are alone, wandering in a solar system with no secrets. When Cassini dove into Saturn's atmosphere, taking with him all of his archives and memory, he also dove in with a rare chance for us to confront this new reality, a chance to look into the cosmos and see something beyond rocks and dust. Perhaps the mission was not terminated just for safety's sake, but because touching the threshold of truth requires more than technology. It demands transformation, an internal change, a new mindset. And that scares, because accepting that there is something or someone out there requires us to reevaluate who we are inside. Does our behavior as a species justify access to such profound knowledge? Are we as humanity ready to know what lies beneath the ice sheets of Enceladus or the methane storms of Titan? Or could it be that in some dark room, leaders and scientists have come to the conclusion that the time is not yet ripe, that revealing everything now would bring more collapse than awakening? The truth has weight. And sometimes it's not the universe that hides secrets from us. It's us who still can't sustain the impact of understanding them. But what if it's not just about what exists out there? And yes, about what that reveals about us. Our limitations, our intentions, our choices. Because perhaps Saturn's biggest secret isn't in its mysterious moons, but in what the simple possibility of a discovery there does to our mind and our heart. Do we want the truth or just what we can bear? Are we looking for sincere answers or just explanations that keep us comfortable at the center of our own narrative? In the end, every piece of evidence erased, every transmission cut off, every Probe destroyed doesn't just erase data, it erases possibilities. And this is perhaps the greatest loss of all. Not that of concrete proof, but that of the right to imagine, to dream, to explore without strings attached. Because if there's something out there waiting to be discovered, it's not just a life form or an artificial structure. It's a reflection of a journey that began long before Cassini. ... And continues now within each of us. Comment there. I want to know the truth. If you've come this far, it's because this journey resonated somewhere within you. And if it made sense, if at some point you found yourself questioning, connecting pieces, or simply allowing yourself to imagine ... then maybe this channel really is the place for you. Here, we don't deliver ready-made answers. We create better questions. And if you value this type of content, this way of looking at the unknown with depth, skepticism, and curiosity, subscribe here to the channel to continue exploring this together with me. Leave a like if this video provoked you in any way. It's this simple gesture that helps the message follow and reach more people who, like you, feel that something doesn't add up to the official stories. And in the comments, tell me if you stayed until the end. Right? I'm with you until the end. This way, I know who is really on this journey, thinking outside the curve and seeing beyond what they show us. There's a video here that complements this subject and can take you even deeper into this investigation. Click and stay with me there.